The impeachment story is a story where we simply need to get the facts first. We've been through this circus multiple times already. The facts will emerge, and we'll just see what happens.
Right. The way Politico put it earlier is that Speaker Pelosi's months-long effort to contain the push for impeachment, Michelle, has crumbled in the face of the issue with Trump and the Ukraine call. Do you believe that is the case, that we might be on that path? And if so, what's the significance?
Yeah, so she's tried to hold this off for a long time because she thought it was a real political loser for the Democrats to pursue impeachment. It's unclear whether it's just pressure, increasing pressure from members of her party that she's doing this or bowing to them or at least having this meeting, or if she truly believes that perhaps the political calculus has changed and it might turn out to be a winner. To James' point, we have to see what are the facts. President Trump has referred to releasing the transcript of this phone conversation with the president of Ukraine. That would help clear up a lot of things. So that would move things forward dramatically, I think. Bottom line, though, I think the market would be far lower if you thought that actually the president could be ousted. But the impeachment process can happen in the House, but it's not going to get through the Senate.
Well, that's, James, exactly. Before I move off this topic, the last thing I was going to ask you, which is, like Michelle said, if the House does the impeaching, there's no necessary event that comes of that, only if the Senate then advances the cause for his removal from office, correct?
Look, I'm more worried because Pelosi may need a reason not to do USMCA, and this could be it. The House could, of course, have an impeachment vote, but it would go nowhere in the Senate. And then finally, dragging this controversy out is not going to help Joe Biden, who is going to have to explain the activities of his son Hunter no matter what. So I think that Biden and Pelosi should be careful what they wish for. Let's see the facts first before we speculate, and I think no one should jump to conclusions.
Including the market, but I like your point about the USMCA, and you can understand if there's a sell-off about that uncertainty.
That's the market issue.
It certainly is. And Michelle, kind of to that point, that brings us back to what the president said about China this morning that initially sent the markets a little bit lower, like Eamon was talking about. Some tougher talk, but you know, what do you think they're reading into this?
Well, he reiterated a theme, which is China is the second largest economy in the world, and yet when it comes to the World Bank, when it comes to the World Trade Organization, they have this developing nation status. The two don't seem to make sense. They have more Ferraris in the country than any other country in the world, and yet still they're considered a developing nation. And so as a result of that status, they get breaks at the WTO, they get loans at the World Bank, which is geared for very, very poor countries, not countries like China. So that's a theme that he has been pushing on, and you've seen with his appointees, David Malpass at the World Bank, for example. So I think that's partly what's going on here, is he's trying to send a message that their status has to change. China doesn't like that.
Sure, because they get more perks this way, James. But how would you rank these issues, the rhetoric with China and the status of those trade talks relative to the Mexico-Canada agreement that you just mentioned?
Well, the president has been reading Yoram Hazony. He used this speech to set out a striking defense of his America First policy, in which he said that every country needs to deal with its own people first, dealing with peace and prosperity, dignity and justice at home. And in that context, he made a striking critique of China's trade practices, as well as his position on democracy and human rights. This is something the president has soft-pedaled before. I think it probably does point to a slowdown in the U.S.-China trade talks, which the markets may not want to see. But the reality is that calling China out for its bad behavior, calling Iran out, calling Venezuela, you know, these are the ways to get a better deal in the long run. But clearly we have a signal today that the markets will need to wait for resolution.